Jake Morrison stood at the entrance of the massive training hall and took a deep breath. He was 17 years old, average height, with brown hair, and the kind of build that came from running track back on Earth. Nothing special, nothing that would make anyone look twice, but everyone was looking at him now. The training hall was bigger than any gymnasium Jake had ever seen. The ceiling rose so high that clouds of mist gathered near the top. The floor was made of some kind of blue metal that hummed softly under his feet, and all around him stood aliens. Dozens of them, maybe 100. Some were huge. The Crassians towered over everyone else, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 muscular arms and skin the color of dark stone. Their eyes were small and black, and when they looked at Jake, he could see nothing but contempt. Others were fast. The Velith were thin and graceful, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer when they moved. They had 2 arms like humans, but their joints bent in strange ways that allowed them to strike from impossible angles. And then there were the Gorath. They were shorter, but incredibly wide, covered in natural armor plating that made them look like walking tanks. Jake had read that their skin could stop a knife blade without leaving a scratch. Every single one of them was staring at the human boy who had just walked into their world. Jake's father had gotten a job on orbital station Katha 6 months ago. It was a research position, something to do with mapping distant star systems. The pay was good, and the opportunity was once in a lifetime. So the Morrison family had packed up their home in Columbus, Ohio, said goodbye to Earth, and moved to a space station where humans were rare and often unwelcome. The Galactic Youth Academy was mandatory for all young people on the station. That meant combat training at the Vorn Academy of Martial Excellence. Jake's mother had been worried. His father had been nervous, but Jake had simply nodded and said he would do his best. Now, standing in that enormous hall, he wondered if his best would be enough. A loud voice cut through the whispers and laughter. Silence. The room went quiet immediately. A Crassian walked forward from the back of the hall. He was older than the others, with deep scars running across his face and one eye that had turned white from some old injury. He moved with the confidence of someone who had fought 1,000 battles and won every single one. "I am Master Zorak," he announced. "For those of you who are new, welcome to the Academy. For those returning, you know what is expected. Excellence. Discipline. Strength." His single working eye found Jake in the crowd. "And what is this?" Jake felt his face grow warm as every head turned toward him. He forced himself to stand straight and meet the instructor's gaze. "Jake Morrison, sir." "Human. Transfer student." Master Zorak walked closer. He circled Jake slowly, looking at him the way someone might look at a strange insect. The other students began to whisper and laugh again. "Human." Master Zorak said the word like it tasted bad. "I have read about your species. You come from a small planet in an unremarkable solar system. You have no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no armor. Your bones break easily. Your skin tears like paper. Your reflexes are slow compared to almost every other sentient species in the galaxy." He stopped in front of Jake and leaned down until their faces were close. "Why are you here?" Jake kept his voice steady. "To learn, sir." Laughter erupted around the room. Master Zorak did not laugh, but something that might have been amusement flickered across his scarred face. "To learn," he repeated. "Very well. You will learn. You will learn what it means to be weak in a universe that respects only strength." He turned away and addressed the class. "This human will serve as a useful example. Watch him carefully. See how a prey species moves, how it thinks, how it fails. It will teach you what not to do." Jake said nothing. He simply found an empty spot at the back of the room and waited. The training session began. Master Zorak demonstrated basic combat stances, strikes, and blocks. The movements were powerful and aggressive, designed for species with natural advantages that humans did not have. Jake watched carefully, memorizing every detail. When it came time to practice, the other students paired off quickly. No one wanted to work with the human. Jake stood alone until Master Zorak pointed at him. "You, human, come forward." Jake walked to the center of the training floor. Master Zorak gestured to a young Crassian who had been watching with particular interest. He was slightly younger than the instructor, but already massive. His forearms were thick with muscle, and his expression was cruel. "This is Draven," Master Zorak said. "He is the top student in this academy. He will demonstrate proper technique using you as his target." Draven smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Try not to break too quickly, little human," Draven said. "I want to enjoy this." What followed was painful. Draven did not hold back. He threw Jake across the room, slammed him into the floor, and knocked him down again and again. Each time Jake got up, Draven hit him harder. The other students laughed and cheered. Through it all, Jake did not complain. He did not cry out. He simply got up, again and again, and waited for the next blow. When the session finally ended, Jake was covered in bruises. His lip was bleeding. One of his eyes was starting to swell shut. But he was still standing. Master Zorak looked at him with something that might have been surprise. "You are more durable than I expected, human." Most prey species would have stayed down. Jake wiped the blood from his mouth. "I'm not most humans, sir," Draven laughed. "He's stupid. That's what he is. Tomorrow I'll hit him twice as hard." Jake looked at Draven. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something cold and calculating. Then it was gone, replaced by the same humble expression he had worn all day. "I look forward to it," Jake said quietly. As he walked out of the training hall, Jake's mind was already working. He had learned a lot today. Not just about the fighting styles taught at the academy, but about his opponents, their weaknesses, their blind spots, their arrogance. Back on Earth, Jake's mother had been a martial arts instructor. His grandfather had been a soldier. His grandmother had survived things that would break most people. The Morrisons were not a family that gave up easily. These aliens thought they knew what humans were capable of. They were wrong. Jake smiled to himself as he headed back to his quarters. The real training was about to begin. 3 weeks passed on orbital station Ketha 7, and Jake Morrison became the most popular joke in the Vorn Academy of Martial Excellence. Every morning, he walked into the training hall. Every morning, the laughter started before he even reached his spot at the back of the room. The other students had created games around humiliating him. They would trip him in the hallways. They would knock his food tray out of his hands in the cafeteria. They would whisper insults just loud enough for him to hear. Draven was the worst. The young Crassian had made it his personal mission to remind Jake every single day that humans did not belong here. "Look at the little prey animal," Draven would announce loudly whenever Jake entered a room. "Did you practice falling down last night, human? You should. It's the only thing you're good at." His forearms would flex as he spoke, showing off muscles that could crush steel. The other students would laugh and agree. Even the instructors seemed to enjoy the entertainment. Master Zorak used Jake as a demonstration dummy almost every class. He would show attack techniques by hitting Jake. He would show throwing techniques by throwing Jake. He would show submission holds by bending Jake's arms and legs until he gasped in pain. Through all of it, Jake never complained. He never fought back. He simply got up, brushed himself off, and waited for the next lesson. What nobody noticed was how carefully Jake was watching. Every night, after the academy closed, Jake would sneak into the empty training halls. He had discovered that the station's security systems had a blind spot between 2 and 4 inches the morning. During those 2 hours, he had the entire facility to himself. He started by studying the recordings. The academy kept video files of every training session, every sparring match, every tournament fight going back decades. Jake watched them all. He studied how the Crassians moved, how they attacked, where they left themselves open. He analyzed the Velith, learning to predict their lightning-fast strikes by watching their shoulder movements. He memorized the weak points in Gorith armor plating. Then he trained. Jake's mother, Linda Morrison, had been a martial arts instructor back on Earth. She had taught him Brazilian jiu-jitsu since he could walk. His grandfather, Henry Morrison, had served in the military and taught him boxing and wrestling. His grandmother, Rose, had grown up in a rough neighborhood and taught him something she called street survival, which was basically how to fight dirty when your life depended on it. Jake combined everything he knew with everything he was learning. He practiced submissions that could work on four-armed opponents. He developed strikes that targeted the specific nerve clusters in Crassian anatomy. He studied xenobiology textbooks that his father brought home from work, mapping out pressure points and vulnerable areas in every species at the academy. He ran laps around the station's outer ring until his lungs burned. He did push-ups until his arms shook. He practiced the same kick 1,000 times until it became automatic. Nobody saw any of this. To everyone at the academy, Jake was just the weak human who showed up every day to get beaten. One evening, as Jake was leaving a particularly brutal training session, someone called out to him. "Wait." Jake turned. A Velith girl was standing in the hallway. She was about his age, with silver skin and large dark eyes that seemed to see everything. He recognized her from class. Her name was Syra, and unlike the others, she had never laughed at him. "You move differently when you think nobody is watching," Syra said. Jake kept his face neutral. "What do you mean?" "I have good eyes. Better than humans." She stepped closer. "In class, you stumble and fall like the clumsy creature everyone thinks you are. But sometimes, for just a moment, I see something else. The way you shift your weight, the way you position your feet. You're not as helpless as you pretend to be." Jake studied her for a long moment. He had been careful, very careful. But the Velith were known for their incredible eyesight and attention to detail. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Syra's expression was hard to read. "Because I don't like Draven. He's a bully who was born into a powerful family and thinks that makes him special. I would very much enjoy seeing someone prove him wrong." Jake allowed himself a small smile. "What makes you think that someone could be me?" "I don't know yet, but I'm curious." She tilted her head. "Humans are strange. Your species is young and weak compared to most of the galaxy, but somehow you went from living in caves to traveling between stars in just a few thousand years. That's faster than any other species in recorded history. Much faster." She moved closer, lowering her voice. "My grandmother told me something once. She said never underestimate a species that clawed its way to the top of its food chain with nothing but rocks and determination. She said humans are like water, soft and yielding, until suddenly they are a flood that destroys everything in their path." Jake looked at Syra with new respect. "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She was. She died fighting in the Velith Wars." Syra straightened up. "Whatever you're planning, human, I want to watch, and if you need help, I might be willing to provide it." Jake considered his options. Having an ally could be useful, especially one with enhanced senses who could warn him if someone was watching. "I'm not planning anything," he said carefully. "I'm just trying to survive." Syra smiled. It made her silver face look almost warm. "Of course you are. But if you happen to accidentally reveal some hidden talent that humiliates Draven in front of the entire academy, I will be the first to applaud." She walked away, leaving Jake alone in the hallway. That night, Jake trained harder than ever. He added 2 extra hours to his routine. He practiced techniques that nobody at the academy had ever seen. He pushed his body past its limits, knowing that it would adapt and grow stronger. His bruises from class were turning yellow as they healed. By tomorrow, there would be new ones. That was fine. Pain was just information. It told him what he needed to work on. At 4 inches the morning, Jake finally stopped. He was covered in sweat and breathing hard. Every muscle in his body ached, but when he looked at himself in the training room mirror, he saw something that made all the pain worth it. He saw a weapon being forged. The tournament was 6 weeks away. The annual tournament of Rising Warriors, where students competed for rankings that would shape their futures. Jake had already checked the rules. Any student could enter. Any student could challenge any other student. When that day came, Draven would learn what humans were truly capable of. Jake smiled at his reflection. It was not a friendly smile. 13 seconds, he whispered to himself. It was a goal he had set. The amount of time he would need to defeat the top student at the academy in front of everyone. He turned off the lights and headed back to his quarters. Tomorrow would bring more mockery, more pain, more humiliation. That was fine. Every day they laughed at him, they stopped paying attention. And every day they stopped paying attention, Jake grew a little bit stronger. The prey was about to become the predator. The day the tournament brackets were announced, Jake Morrison was eating lunch alone in the corner of the cafeteria. This was normal. Nobody wanted to sit with the human. The tables around him were always empty, as if being weak was a disease that could spread through proximity. He was chewing on something that the station called a nutrition bar when the commotion started. Students began rushing toward the main hall, talking excitedly. Jake finished his food slowly, then followed the crowd. A massive holographic display had been set up in the center of the hall. It showed a complicated bracket system, with dozens of names arranged in a pyramid shape. The Tournament of Rising Warriors, the most important event of the academy year. Jake scanned the display until he found his own name near the bottom. Then he looked at who he had been matched against in the first round. And he had to work very hard to keep his face blank. Draven. His first opponent would be Draven. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor. Around him, students were reacting to the same discovery. Laughter spread through the crowd like wildfire. Someone was pointing at the bracket and howling with amusement. Others were already pulling out their communication devices to share the news. Did you see? The human is fighting Draven. This is going to be incredible. Draven will destroy him. I give him 10 seconds. Maybe 15 if Draven wants to play with his food. Jake stood quietly and let the noise wash over him. He noticed Syra watching from across the hall. She raised one silver eyebrow, and he gave her the smallest nod. Then Draven appeared. The Crassian pushed through the crowd, all four of his arms spread wide as he basked in the attention. His face was split by a massive grin that showed all of his sharp teeth. "Where is he?" Draven shouted. "Where is my little human opponent?" The crowd parted, revealing Jake standing alone. Draven walked toward him slowly, enjoying every moment. "The universe has given me a gift," Draven announced loudly. "I get to start the tournament by crushing the weakest creature in the academy. This is almost too easy." Jake looked up at the massive alien. Draven was nearly 2 feet taller than him. His 4 arms were each thicker than Jake's entire body. His stone-colored skin looked like it could stop bullets. "Hello, Draven," Jake said calmly. Draven leaned down until his face was inches from Jake's. "I've been waiting for this moment. Little prey. In class, I have to hold back. The instructors won't let me really hurt you, but in the tournament, there are different rules. As long as I don't kill you, I can do whatever I want." He grabbed Jake's shirt with 2 of his hands and lifted him off the ground. "I'm going to break your arms first, then your legs. Then I'm going to drag your broken body around the arena so everyone can see what happens to weak species who forget their place." Jake didn't struggle. He hung in Draven's grip like a rag doll, his face completely calm. "Are you even listening to me?" Draven shook him roughly. "Are you too stupid to be scared?" "I'm listening," Jake said quietly. "I'm just thinking about something my grandfather told me once." "What?" "He said that the loudest dog in the yard is usually the most afraid." For a moment, Draven's eyes went wide with shock. Then his face twisted with rage. He threw Jake across the hall. Jake hit the floor hard and rolled several times before coming to a stop. The crowd gasped. Some laughed. A few looked uncomfortable. Draven stalked toward Jake, who was slowly getting to his feet. "You dare insult me? You're dead, human. Not in the tournament. Now." Before Draven could reach him, a voice cut through the hall like a blade. "Enough." Master Zorak appeared from nowhere, stepping between Draven and Jake. His scarred face was impossible to read. "Fighting outside the arena is forbidden," Master Zorak said coldly. "You know this." Draven. Draven was breathing hard, all 4 fists clenched. "He insulted me, and you will have your chance to respond. In the tournament. According to the rules." Master Zorak turned his single eye toward Jake. "As for you, human, I suggest you spend the next week preparing your surrender speech. It will save you some pain. Jake brushed dust off his clothes. A small trickle of blood ran from a cut on his forehead. With respect, sir. I don't plan on surrendering. Silence fell over the hall. Even Draven stopped his angry breathing. Master Zorak studied Jake for a long moment. You intend to actually fight? You understand that the tournament has no restrictions on injury? Draven could cripple you for life. I understand. And you still want to compete? Yes, sir. Something flickered across Master Zorak's face. It might have been confusion. It might have been curiosity. Very well. Your funeral. Human. He walked away. The crowd began to disperse, already spreading gossip about what had just happened. Draven shot Jake one final look of pure hatred before leaving with his friends. Syra appeared at Jake's side. That was either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. Jake touched the cut on his forehead and winced. My mother always said that courage and stupidity look exactly the same until you see the results. Your mother sounds interesting. She is. She also taught me that sometimes you have to let people underestimate you. Jake smiled slightly. Right up until the moment you don't. They walked together toward the medical station. Around them, students whispered and pointed. The betting pools are already open, Syra said. I checked. The odds against you are 500 to 1. Some people are betting on how many seconds you'll last. The most generous estimate is 30. 1. Jake nodded thoughtfully. What's the payout if I win? Syra stopped walking and stared at him. You're serious. Answer the question. If someone bet everything they had and you won, they would become wealthy beyond imagination. But that's not going to happen, because you can't win. Nobody has ever seen a human defeat a Crossian in single combat. It's not possible. Jake started walking again. My grandmother used to say that impossible is just a word people use when they've run out of imagination. That night, Jake stood on the observation deck and looked out at the stars. The station rotated slowly, giving him a view of distant galaxies and nebulae that stretched across infinity. His father found him there an hour later. I heard what happened, his father said, standing beside him. Your mother is worried. I know. She wants you to withdraw from the tournament. Jake was quiet for a moment. What do you think? His father sighed. I think you're too much like her, and too much like your grandfather, and too much like your grandmother. He put a hand on Jake's shoulder. I think that no matter what I say, you're going to do this anyway. Yes. Then I only have one piece of advice. His father squeezed his shoulder. Win. Jake turned to look at his father. There were tears in the older man's eyes, but also something else. Pride. I will, Jake said. 13 seconds. What? That's how long it's going to take me to beat him. Jake turned back to the stars. I've been planning this since the first day. Every bruise, every insult, every moment of humiliation. It was all preparation. They think they know what humans are capable of. They're wrong. His father was silent for a long time. Finally, he nodded. Then show them, he said. Show them what a Morrison can do. Jake smiled. 1 week, until the tournament. 1 week until everything changed. The combat arena was packed with more spectators than Jake Morrison had ever seen in one place. Thousands of beings filled the seats that rose in massive circles around the central fighting floor. Holographic cameras floated everywhere, broadcasting the tournament across the entire station and beyond. Somewhere out there, millions of viewers were watching. Jake stood in the preparation room beneath the arena, listening to the roar of the crowd above. The walls vibrated with the sound. It reminded him of the time his father had taken him to a football game back on Earth. The excitement, the energy, the anticipation of violence. Some things were universal. The door opened and Syra slipped inside. Her silver skin seemed to glow in the dim light. I thought you might want to know what's happening out there, she said. Tell me. Draven has been giving interviews for the past hour. He's described in great detail how he plans to dismember you. The bookmakers have stopped taking bets because the odds are so lopsided. There's a group of Crassian nobles in the front row who brought medical equipment to collect souvenirs after the fight. Jake raised an eyebrow. Souvenirs? Apparently they want to take home pieces of the human who was stupid enough to challenge their champion. Jake laughed. It was a genuine sound, full of real amusement. Cyrus stared at him like he had lost his mind. How can you laugh? Are you not afraid? Jake considered the question carefully. Fear is just a signal. It tells you that something important is about to happen. My grandfather taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being afraid and doing the thing anyway. He began wrapping his hands in simple cloth tape. No gloves, no armor. Just the same hands that had thrown countless punches in empty training rooms at 2 a.m. You're really not going to wear any protection? Syra asked. I don't need it. Protection slows you down. Makes you rely on equipment instead of skill. Where I come from, there's a saying. The best defense is not getting hit. Syra shook her head slowly. Humans are very strange. We prefer the word adaptable. A tone sounded through the room. The first match was being called. Jake and Draven. The crowd above exploded with noise. Jake stood up and rolled his shoulders. Every muscle in his body felt loose and ready. He had trained for this moment for weeks. No, longer than that. He had trained for this his entire life. Every lesson his mother had taught him, every story his grandfather had told him, every survival trick his grandmother had passed down. It all came together now. Syra grabbed his arm as he walked toward the door. Jake, whatever happens up there, I want you to know that I believe you can win. I don't know why. Logic tells me it's impossible. But there's something about you that makes me think the impossible is exactly what you do. Jake smiled at her. Thank you, Syra. That means more than you know. He walked out of the preparation room and into a long tunnel that led to the arena floor. The noise grew louder with each step. By the time he reached the entrance, it was deafening. The arena floor was a circle about 50 meters across. The surface was made of the same blue metal as the training hall, smooth and slightly springy. Perfect for absorbing impact. Perfect for quick movements. Draven was already there. The Crassian stood in the center of the arena, with all 4 arms raised. The crowd was chanting his name. His stone-colored skin had been oiled until it gleamed. His muscles flexed and bulged as he posed for the cameras. He looked like a god of war descended from ancient legends. When Jake emerged from the tunnel, the chanting stopped. For a moment, there was confused silence. Then, the laughter began. A human. A small, fragile, unarmored human, walking into the arena like he actually belonged there. Some spectators thought it was a joke. Others thought it was a mistake. A few were genuinely angry that their entertainment was being delayed by this absurd warm-up act. Jake walked to the center of the arena and stopped a few meters from Draven. He didn't pose. He didn't show off. He just stood there, calm and balanced, his wrapped hands hanging loosely at his sides. Draven's grin was enormous. I almost feel bad about what I'm about to do to you, little prey. Almost. 2. Jake said nothing. Master Zorak descended from the judge's platform on a floating disc. His scarred face was serious as he looked at both combatants. This is a tournament match under full combat rules, he announced. His voice amplified so the entire arena could hear. The match ends when one fighter yields, falls unconscious, or leaves the ring. Lethal force is permitted but strongly discouraged. He looked directly at Jake. Permanent injury, however, is entirely acceptable. The crowd cheered. Master Zorak continued. Draven of House Koran, you are the challenger from the first position. Jake Morrison of Earth, you are the challenger from the last position. This match will determine which of you advances to the next round. He paused, looking between them. Human, I am required to ask one final time. Do you wish to withdraw? There is no shame in recognizing superior strength. Jake looked at Master Zorak. Then he looked at Draven. Then he looked at the thousands of spectators who had come to watch him be destroyed. No, he said. Master Zorak nodded slowly. Something in his eye might have been respect. Or it might have been pity. Hard to tell with Crassians. He floated back to the judge's platform. A massive holographic timer appeared above the arena, showing zeros. "Combatants ready," Master Zorak announced. Draven dropped into a fighting stance, all four arms raised. His entire body radiated power and violence. Every line of his form promised destruction. Jake shifted his weight slightly. His hands came up, but not in any fighting stance the crowd recognized. It was loose, relaxed, almost casual. His feet were positioned in a way that looked wrong to anyone who had trained at the academy. The crowd murmured in confusion. What was the human doing? "On my signal," Master Zorak said. "Begin in 3, 2, 1. The starting tone sounded. The timer began counting. Draven lunged forward with a roar, all four fists driving toward Jake's body in a combination that had ended dozens of fights. It was fast, powerful, and unavoidable. Except Jake wasn't there anymore. The crowd gasped. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, Jake had moved. Not backward, which was what every instinct would tell a normal fighter to do. He had moved forward and to the side, slipping past Draven's attack by a margin so small that the cameras would later show his shirt had been touched by the passing fist. But he hadn't just dodged. He was inside Draven's guard now, closer than anyone had ever gotten to the Crassian during a fight, and his hands were already moving. The timer showed 0-1. Everything that came next would become legend. What happened in that arena would be studied, analyzed, and debated across the galaxy for generations to come. It would be shown in military academies as an example of perfect combat execution. It would be referenced in scientific papers about human physiology and fighting capability. It would become the most viewed video in the history of the Galactic Youth Academy. But for those who were there, watching it happen in real time, it was simply impossible. The timer showed 0-1 when Jake Morrison moved inside Draven's guard. From the outside, it looked like he had simply appeared there, like some kind of teleportation. The cameras would later reveal the truth. Jake had read Draven's attack before it even started. He had seen the slight tension in the Crassian's shoulders, the tiny shift in weight that signaled which direction the punch would come from, and he had moved accordingly. Seconds 2 through 4 were where everything changed. Jake's hands became a blur. They moved so fast that the spectators couldn't track them. Even the Velith, with their enhanced eyesight, would later admit they had trouble following what happened. 7 strikes. That's what the slow-motion analysis would eventually reveal. 7 precise strikes to 7 specific points on Draven's torso. Not random attacks, not desperate flailing. Each one was targeted with surgical accuracy to nerve clusters that Crassian anatomy kept poorly protected beneath their stone-like skin. Jake had spent weeks studying xenobiology textbooks. He had memorized every diagram, every description, every weakness in every species at the academy. He knew exactly where to hit and exactly how hard. The first 2 strikes paralyzed Draven's upper right arm. The next 2 disabled his upper left arm. Strikes 5 and 6 took out his lower arms. Strike 7 hit a nerve bundle near the spine that made Draven's legs go weak. All of this happened in 3 seconds. The timer showed 0-4. Draven's eyes went wide with shock. He was still trying to understand what was happening. His 4 arms had been his greatest weapons, and now they hung limp at his sides, refusing to respond to his commands. He tried to step back, but his legs were sluggish and uncoordinated. "What?" he gasped. "What did you do to me?" Jake didn't answer. He was already moving to the next phase. Seconds 5 through 8 were devoted to positioning. Jake circled around Draven, staying close, staying inside the range where the Crassian size became a disadvantage rather than an advantage. He used footwork that had been developed on Earth over thousands of years. Techniques passed down from generation to generation of human fighters. Draven tried to turn, tried to track his opponent, but Jake was always one step ahead. It was like trying to catch smoke with your hands. "Fight me," Draven roared. "Stop running and fight me." The crowd was silent now. Nobody was laughing anymore. They were watching something they had never seen before. A human controlling a Crassian. A prey species dominating a predator. The timer showed 0-8. Seconds 9 through 12 were the takedown. Jake swept Draven's legs with a technique called an Osoto Gari. It was a judo throw that had been perfected in Japan hundreds of years ago. Simple, elegant, devastating when applied correctly. Draven was twice Jake's size and probably 4 times his weight. It didn't matter. The technique wasn't about strength, it was about leverage, timing, and understanding how bodies move through space. Draven fell, but Jake didn't just knock him down. He controlled the entire descent. His hands guided Draven's body, determining exactly how and where the Crassian would land. When Draven hit the arena floor, he landed flat on his back with all his weight, driving the air from his lungs. Jake followed him down, transitioning smoothly into a position of complete control. One knee pressed against Draven's chest, one hand controlled his head, and one finger pressed lightly against the nerve cluster in the Crassian's throat. The timer showed 0:12, second 13. The arena was absolutely silent. Thousands of spectators sat frozen, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The floating cameras zoomed in on the 2 fighters. One massive Crassian warrior, lying helpless on his back, one small human, kneeling over him with a finger on his throat. Jake leaned close to Draven's ear. "On my planet," he said quietly, "we have a saying. The bigger they are, the harder they fall." Then he raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Yield." Draven's face was twisted with disbelief, humiliation, and fear. His 4 arms were still paralyzed. He couldn't move. He couldn't fight. All he could do was stare up at the human who had beaten him. "Yield," Jake repeated, "or I press harder, and you stop breathing." The timer showed 0:13. Draven's voice came out as a whisper. I yield." For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The silence was so complete that you could hear the hum of the arena's lighting system. Then Sira started clapping. The sound echoed through the arena, lonely and defiant. Then another person joined. Then another. And then the dam broke completely. The arena exploded with noise. Some people were cheering, others were shouting in disbelief. Many were looking at their betting accounts with expressions of absolute shock. The Crassian nobles who had brought medical equipment to collect souvenirs sat frozen, their collection containers empty and useless. Jake stood up and stepped back from Draven. He offered no help to the fallen warrior. Draven had to struggle to his feet on his own as feeling slowly returned to his limbs. Master Zorak descended on his floating disc. His scarred face showed something Jake had never seen before. "Respect. Winner," Master Zorak announced, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Jake Morrison of Earth. Victory by submission in 13 seconds. Jake bowed slightly, a human gesture that probably meant nothing to most of the spectators. Then he turned to face the crowd. "You called me prey," he said, his voice amplified by the arena's systems. "You laughed at me. You said humans were weak, fragile, inferior, and maybe you were right about some things. We're not the strongest species, we're not the fastest. We can't grow armor or regenerate limbs or breathe in vacuum." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But we survived ice ages that killed 90% of all life on our planet. We hunted animals 10 times our size using nothing but sharpened sticks and cooperation. We learned to tame fire, to build cities, to cross oceans, to reach for the stars. Not because we were powerful, but because we refused to give up. Because we adapted. Because we found ways to win. When winning seemed impossible." Jake looked at Draven, who was standing now, his arms still weak, his face burning with shame. "Never underestimate a human," Jake said. "We've been punching above our weight class since before we had fire. And we're not going to stop now." "Oh." He walked toward the exit tunnel, leaving the arena in stunned silence. Sira met him in the preparation room. Her silver face was bright with joy. "That was incredible," she breathed. "You actually did it. 13 seconds. Exactly like you said." Jake sat down heavily on a bench. The adrenaline was fading, and he was starting to feel the toll of the past weeks. The training. The lack of sleep. The constant pressure. "Yeah," he said tiredly. "I did it. What happens now?" Jake looked at her and smiled. Now I win the rest of the tournament. And then I start teaching. Teaching everything I know. Every technique, every strategy, every trick that humans have developed over thousands of years of trying not to die. He leaned back against the wall. This galaxy thinks it knows what humans are. It's time to show them how wrong they are. Somewhere above them, the crowd was still roaring. The news was spreading across the station and beyond. A human had defeated a Crassian. The impossible had happened. In the archives of the Galactic Academy, there was a file on human beings. That night, someone would add a new note to the entry. It would read, "Classification updated from prey species to apex predator. Deceptive." And below that, in bold letters, "Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." Jake Morrison closed his eyes and listened to the distant cheering. This was just the beginning.